Hey, it's Amanda here again. Thanks for coming back for another video. Or if this is your first time, so glad to have you here. So last time what I was talking about was some of the basics that you need to know to start crochet, the different materials you'll need, and I also showed you guys how to do a chain. And if you don't remember, this is our chain from last time. Ta-da! So what you might be wondering is, how do we go from making this chain to actually crocheting things? And I know sometimes when you start crocheting you think of like, oh, people make scarves, and I'll show you one here. This is just a basic crochet scarf, which actually I didn't make, this my sister did. But you might be wondering, how do we go from the chain to a scarf? And also you might be thinking, okay, is a scarf all I can make? Let me show you a couple more things just so you kind of get excited about what you'll be able to make. I have this blanket here. This is all crochet, and I had to do a lot of these little chains in there, and that was the start for this whole big blanket. I've got, you can make pillow covers. I've got this little turtle, and a little bird. So lots of fun things you can make. And here's one more. This is a cool hat that I recently made with my school colors. So I've just shown you a sampling of all the cool things you can make through crocheting, and actually a lot of those I found on patterns online. It's great. You can look on Pinterest, you can do a Google search, find all kinds of cool patterns out there. So what I want you to take away from that is this little chain does matter. You are going somewhere, and also there's a whole big world of things that you can create with crochet. So I don't want you to go after last video, you've been practicing your chain, you're like, cool, now I've got this really long string of yarn, now what? And that's what I'm going to show you guys today. Now what? I'm going to talk about the next stitch, which is called a single crochet. A single crochet is a shorter stitch, and it has the fewest steps out of any stitches, so that's why I'm going to start with this one. It can feel a little awkward. I personally like doing double crochet better because it has more of a rhythmic movement, but I'm going to start with a single crochet because it's easier to master because the stitch has fewer steps. But before I show you the details of how to do the stitch, we need to talk about some of the anatomy of a crochet work. So the way it works is when you crochet, you always work from right to left. And of course, if you're left-handed, you work left to right. And I'm sorry for you lefties out there. It's a lot harder to find tutorials and things. But just you're going to reverse everything if you're left-handed. But most people crochet right-handed. So like we did yesterday, we worked from right to left. And so our project kept growing to the right of us, and we kept grabbing yarn from the left. Now, if you're always working to the left, you think, how do I go taller? And this scarf is a great example. This scarf, I started down in this corner right here, and I worked across, so went to the right. And to do the next row, you turn the project, you come up, and you work across. Turn the project, come up, and work across. Let me show you with some thicker yarn so it'll be easier to see. This part right here, you can kind of see this is called ribbing, where you see the little kind of line going across. That's ribbing there, that's ribbing there. And that was the chain. So when I worked on this one, I chained across, then I turned the work, came up the side right here, and started working across. And so these are each stitches here, right? Here's a stitch, here's a stitch, here's a stitch, and I did that all the way across. So then I had a piece of fabric like this. And then I turned the work again, came up the side right here, and then did a stitch across, and so on. And I'll go ahead and I'll show you a little video clip of me working on a couple rows just so you understand how the structure of the crochet works. Alright, so as I said, we're going to go ahead and I'm going to show you first some of the basic idea of how you work the crochet stitches up, and then we'll actually get into the tutorial of the single crochet stitch itself. So here's a chain, just like we did yesterday. I'm using some thicker yarn, so hopefully it's easy to see. You can see, I didn't mention this last time, but it's very important that you count your stitches, especially when you're first starting. I know when I was working on a scarf, I wouldn't always count, and so my first scarf, at the beginning, it gets wider, and then it gets narrower, and then it gets wider, and it's just kind of not even. So it's really important to count stitches when you're first starting. And even now, even though I've been crocheting for a long time, I still sometimes need to count stitches so that way I don't lose track of where I'm at in the work. So I'm going to show you how to count chain stitches. So if you look, take my hook out. If you look right here, you'll remember that the little shape right there that's like a V or a heart, that's our first one. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. And this is what the bottom side looks like. You might be getting confused with where's the V or the heart shape at, because you might see this and be like, is that the heart shape, or it might be a little twisted. But you want to try to smooth it out so you can see clearly where the chain stitches are. So as I was saying, when you work crochet, you always work from right to left, just like how we did the chain. So if I want to go taller with this work, I'm going to turn this, and now I will need to come up the side first, which I actually already have a stitch right here. This 11th crochet chain is going to count as coming up the side. And then when I work across, I'm going to work in the chain. So there's different methods, and I can talk more about this another time. For starting, I would recommend just going on the back loop of the chain. So you can see this chain right here, that's a chain, and I've already gone in the back loop. So the next one's going to be right here. And so I'll do a stitch there, and I'll teach you how to do the stitch in a moment. I'm just showing how the basic idea of how it works. And so you can see now I'm coming up taller. So let me zip through this last bit. Okay, and here's the last stitch. So you can see that we started with the chain. Remember, when we worked with the chain, we were starting from this end, because it was turned this way. We worked across and got to this point here. We turned it, came up the side, and worked across. So let me show you that one more time, just so you can kind of understand the structure of the crochet work, and then I will go ahead and actually show you the stitch itself. So I'm going to come up the side, and then I'm going to work across. And here we are coming to the end of our third row. And as I said, it's important to count stitches. So an easy way, you can see that each row we're creating what looks like a chain on the top. See how you have the nice V's? And that's the top of a stitch, each one of those. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and that's how many we started with. So that means I didn't add or lose any stitches, which is just how I wanted it to be. So hopefully that gives you an idea and you'll understand how we worked across, came up, worked across, came up, worked across, came up, and worked across, and ended up where we are. Now that you know about the single crochet stitch, watch my next video to learn how to do the single crochet stitch.